In 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland, he didn't come into the world with much, no wealth, no family legacy, and as it turned out, no father. His dad, a carpenter named Thomas, disappeared so early in Pierce's life that he couldn't remember his face, voice, or even his presence. It was like he had vanished into thin air. His mother, May, was left to carry the weight. She worked as a nurse, holding together a life that had already begun to fall apart. But in 1957, she made a painful choice. She left for London to find work, leaving 4-year-old Pierce behind in Ireland. She had no other option. Still, that decision created another hole in Pierce's young world. What was meant to be a short separation turned into 7 long years. During that time, he was passed around between relatives, first with his grandparents in Navan, then an uncle and aunt in Trim. Each new house came with new rules, new schools, and unfamiliar faces. Pierce never stayed long enough to belong. He learned to keep quiet, to observe, to survive. He was always the new kid, always the outsider. Teachers noticed something in him. He was bright but withdrawn, always looking out the window, never quite present. Then everything changed in 1964. At age 11, he moved to Green, Scotland. His mother had remarried. Her new husband, William Carmichael, worked in a factory. He was kind and patient, but for a boy who had grown up without consistency, this new home brought mixed emotions. Pierce felt torn. He was happy to see his mother again, but angry too, and now she had someone else, a new man in her life, a man who wasn't his father. Still, William tried. He taught Pierce small things, fishing, fixing things, how to trust again. He never pushed too hard. He never tried to replace anyone. One day, William took Pierce to the cinema. It was 1964, and the movie was Goldfinger. Sean Connery as James Bond lit up the screen. That night changed everything. Bond wasn't just a character to Pierce. He was the opposite of everything Pierce had felt. Bond was strong. Bond was confident. Bond was in control. And Pierce wanted to be just like that. By age 16, Pierce made another bold move. He dropped out of school in London and enrolled in St. Martin's School of Art. He didn't have money or a clear plan, just a passion for painting. He loved the work of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. Back then, acting wasn't even on his mind. His focus was illustration and design. He survived on toast and tea while his classmates came from wealthier homes. He was determined to prove he belonged. But fate had other plans. In 1971, while still studying art, Pierce stumbled into a theatre workshop in South London. He saw a fire eater practicing his act. Instead of walking away, Pierce asked if he could try. That one spontaneous moment rewrote his future. The group noticed something in him, a mix of bravery and natural presence. They invited him to join. He had never acted before, but now everything started to click. Just like Bond, he had entered a world of risk and charm. Soon after, Pierce joined the Drama Centre London. For 3 years, from 1973 to 1976, he trained harder than ever before. The school was intense. More than 60% of students dropped out. The teachers were tough. They broke students down to rebuild them. Some quit. Some had breakdowns. But Pierce pushed through. He worked side jobs. He studied Shakespeare. He even trained in mime and circus acts. It cost £1,200 a year, a fortune back then, but Pierce never gave up. In 1976, he got his first real break, a stage play called Wait Until Dark. It was a thriller, and Pierce played a character that made people uncomfortable. The director saw something cold in him, something unsettling. That edge worked. A year later, he took on a bold role in a difficult Tennessee Williams play, The Red Devil Battery Sign. The play had flopped in America, but Pierce brought it to life in London. Critics praised his performance. Suddenly, people were noticing. He moved to film next. In 1980, he had a blink-and-you-miss-it role in The Mirror Cracked alongside Elizabeth Taylor. He was on screen for less than 30 seconds. He earned just £50, but it was a start. That same year, he appeared in The Long Good Friday with Helen Mirren and Bob Hoskins. He played a minor IRA character. The movie wasn't a hit right away, but over time, it became a cult classic, and there Pierce was, quietly building his path to stardom. In 1982, Pierce Brosnan was barely known outside of the UK. He had done some British TV and theatre work, but nothing major. Then something unexpected happened. He auditioned for a small role on a new show called Remington Steele, not as the lead, but as a murder victim. That could have been it, one scene and done. But NBC's casting director saw something in him. They saw charm, screen presence, something magnetic. So they called him back, not for a minor part, but for the lead role. That decision changed everything. The original plan for Remington Steele was a seasoned American conman in his 50s. Brosnan was 29, young, Irish, and unknown in the United States. Still, the producers took a gamble. Over 200 actors auditioned, many of them well-known Americans. Brosnan got the role. His Irish accent almost cost him the part. Executives feared American viewers wouldn't accept a foreign lead. But once he stepped into the role, he was Remington Steele, cool, smooth, mysterious. And audiences loved him for it. The show premiered on October 1, 1982. Right out of the gate, it was a hit, NBC's second highest-rated new series. In its first year alone, 15.6 million people tuned in each week. But it wasn't a smooth ride. The show was actually cancelled after its fourth season in 1986. Fans were furious. The studio changed its mind. It came back for one last run. The final episode aired in February 1987 and drew nearly 26 million viewers. That's the kind of send-off most shows only dream of. At its peak, Remington Steele was making NBC over $50 million a year just from advertising. International sales added another $200 million. The show aired in more than 80 countries. And something strange happened in America. Between 1983 and 1987, applications for private detective licenses jumped by 340%. Brosnan's cool, clever character had clearly struck a nerve. But success came with a price. Only 2 months after the show started airing, critics were already saying Brosnan should be the next James Bond. In January 1983, Entertainment Weekly called him the most Bond-like actor since Sean Connery. Just a few months later, Bond producer Albert Cubby Broccoli reached out. He was watching. And he was interested. By 1984, the speculation exploded. NBC leaned into it. Their marketing hinted at Brosnan's secret agent vibe. TV Guide ran a cover with him, asking, "The next 007." Even Ian Fleming's widow, Anne Fleming, publicly said that Brosnan looked and acted exactly like what her husband had envisioned for Bond. At the same time, Brosnan was getting serious critical recognition. That same year, he was nominated for a Golden Globe for his role in Nancy Aestia. It was only his second major TV role. He was up against legends, Anthony Hopkins, John Gielgud. Still, Brosnan nearly won. Industry insiders said he lost by just 3 votes. His performance impressed even the real Aestia family, who had originally opposed the series. His Bond journey, though, wasn't going to be simple. Most people think he was first offered Bond in 1985. Not true. He was actually considered for the role in 1983, for A View to a Kill. Roger Moore was unsure about doing another film, and Brosnan was on deck. He'd met Broccoli on the set of For Your Eyes Only, where Brosnan's wife, Cassandra Harris, had a small role. Broccoli took one look at him and said, "If he can act, he's my guy." But the studio panicked. They offered Moore a huge payday, over $3.5 million, to return. So Brosnan's shot was delayed again. Then in 1986, something even worse happened. Remington Steele had been cancelled. But when word got out that Brosnan might be the next Bond, the show's ratings surged. NBC saw a chance. They reversed the cancellation and ordered a short 5th season. Brosnan was still under contract. That meant he couldn't film Bond. It was brutal. The attention he got from being linked to Bond was used against him. He was stuck. And while he finished the final season of Remington Steele, Bond producers moved on. Timothy Dalton got the role. That moment changed everything, for Brosnan and for Bond. Dalton was Brosnan's friend. Losing the role hurt. But he had to smile through it. Dalton's version of Bond was darker, grittier. It didn't go well. License to Kill flopped in the United States, making just $34 million. Brosnan watched from the sidelines. He knew he could have brought something different. Between 1986 and 1994, what fans call the lost years, Brosnan didn't disappear. He made smart choices. In The Fourth Protocol, 1987, he played a British spy in a Cold War thriller. It wasn't Bond, but it was close. He starred in Nomads, 1986, showing his range in a supernatural role. He even did Diet Coke commercials, where he played a smooth, tuxedoed hero, a not-so-subtle nod to Bond. After Remington Steele ended in 1987, Brosnan entered a kind of limbo. The Bond opportunity had slipped through his fingers, and his signature show was over. Hollywood is not always kind to actors once seen as the next big thing who miss their window. But Pierce didn't fade. Instead, he started building a film career, one quiet hit at a time. He starred in The Fourth Protocol in 1987, playing a Soviet assassin opposite Michael Caine. Critics praised his steely demeanor, noting he was more Bond than Bond. He took on diverse roles, romantic leads, villains, and morally grey characters. In Mr. Johnson, 1990, a small film set in colonial Nigeria, he played a British officer navigating power, culture, and ethics. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it earned him critical acclaim. He followed that with a role in The Deceivers, produced by Merchant Ivory, where he portrayed an undercover British agent infiltrating an Indian cult. Once again, Brosnan played with dual identities, always balancing elegance and danger. Then came the 1990s, and something remarkable happened. Pierce started becoming a household name again, not through spy thrillers, but family fare. In 1993, he appeared in Mrs. Doubtfire as Stuart Dunmire, the dashing romantic rival to Robin Williams' cross-dressing father figure. It was the highest-grossing film of the year and introduced Brosnan to a new generation. He was funny, suave, and surprisingly gracious in the role. Critics noted he could have played the villain, but instead, he brought warmth and dignity to a character who could have easily been a cliché. That same year, Brosnan also appeared in The Lawnmower Man, a science fiction film that became a cult hit. His range was widening. He wasn't just the pretty face from Remington Steele anymore, he was a dependable, bankable, and versatile actor. And finally, in 1994, his patience paid off. Timothy Dalton walked away from the Bond franchise after just 2 films. Legal disputes between MGM and Eon Productions had delayed the next Bond installment for years. When they were finally ready to restart, the producers didn't hesitate. They called Pierce. This time, there were no contract conflicts. No studio vetoes. The part was his. He signed the deal in June 1994. He was 41. For Pierce Brosnan, this wasn't just a dream come true, it was a full-circle moment. The role he had been groomed for, denied, haunted by, was finally his. The announcement made global headlines. Fans were ecstatic. Critics were cautious. Could he pull it off? Could he carry the franchise into a new era? GoldenEye premiered in 1995. The world held its breath. And Brosnan delivered. The film grossed over $350 million worldwide and became the most successful Bond film since Moonraker. It was a bold reinvention, more emotional depth, more international intrigue, and a Bond who was charming but bruised by the Cold War's end. Brosnan's 007 was modern but still classic. The New York Times called him a Bond for the 90s, elegant, lethal, and ironic. He brought vulnerability to the role, too, an undercurrent of sadness that made his Bond feel real. This wasn't the invincible superhero of Roger Moore's era. This was a man who hurt, who doubted, who regretted. Brosnan played Bond 4 times: GoldenEye, 1995, Tomorrow Never Dies, 1997, The World Is Not Enough, 1999, and Die Another Day, 2002. Each film made hundreds of millions. He brought in over $1.5 billion at the box office as Bond. Merchandising soared. Video games like GoldenEye 007 for Nintendo 64 became cultural landmarks. He was, without question, a global icon. But it wasn't easy behind the scenes. Brosnan often clashed with producers over tone and story. He wanted to go deeper, to explore Bond's trauma. He pushed for scripts that added emotional realism. The producers, however, prioritized spectacle. He famously disliked Die Another Day's invisible car and over-the-top CGI. He felt the franchise had gone too far into fantasy. And just as suddenly as it had come back, it was gone again. In 2004, while preparing for a 5th film, Brosnan received a phone call. He was no longer Bond. No explanation. No farewell tour. Daniel Craig was in. Brosnan was out. He was devastated. He had carried the franchise through its post-Cold War uncertainty, kept it profitable, and made it matter again. But now he was being quietly replaced. Hollywood is ruthless that way. Still, Brosnan didn't lash out. He handled it with the same grace he brought to Stuart Dunmire. In interviews, he was candid but never bitter. He said, "It was a good run. I did the job. I'm proud." And that was that. But there's more to Pierce Brosnan than Bond. After leaving the role, he dove into character work. In The Matador, 2005, he played a washed-up, neurotic hitman opposite Greg Kinnear. The performance was hilarious, sad, and entirely unlike anything he'd done before. It earned him a Golden Globe nomination. Then came The Ghostwriter, 2010, directed by Roman Polanski. He played a former British Prime Minister, a thinly veiled stand-in for Tony Blair, haunted by war crimes and political secrets. Critics were stunned by his gravitas. In Love Is All You Need, 2012, a Danish-language romantic drama, he showed his softer side, playing a grieving widower who finds love again. His continued working steadily, from indie dramas to Netflix comedies, always choosing roles that interest him more than roles that chase box office glory. Beyond the screen, Pierce's life has been marked by both tragedy and resilience. In 1991, his wife Cassandra Harris died of ovarian cancer. They had been married since 1980. Brosnan adopted her 2 children from a previous marriage, Charlotte and Christopher, and raised them as his own. They also had a son together, Sean. Cass's death shattered him. He later said, "She made me the man I am." In 2013, tragedy struck again. His daughter Charlotte died of the same disease that took her mother. She was just 42. Through it all, Brosnan remained devoted to his family. He remarried in 2001 to journalist and environmentalist Keely Shaye Smith. They have 2 sons together. He credits Keely with helping him find joy again. Pierce Brosnan is not just an actor. He's a philanthropist, an artist, and an activist. He paints in his spare time, often donating his works for charity. He's a vocal advocate for cancer research, ocean conservation, and environmental policy. He's donated millions to these causes, often anonymously. In 2003, he was awarded an honorary OBE, Order of the British Empire, for his services to the arts and to charity. He holds dual citizenship, Irish and American, and has homes in Malibu, Hawaii, and Ireland. Even now, in his 70s, he continues to work, producing, painting, acting, mentoring young performers. He doesn't chase stardom anymore. He never really did. His career was always about survival, about transformation, about rising after each fall. What makes Pierce Brosnan remarkable isn't just that he became James Bond. It's that he survived not becoming Bond when the world expected him to. It's that he overcame abandonment, grief, professional sabotage, and personal heartbreak and still moved forward with grace. He once said, "I'm an actor. That's all I've ever wanted to be. Everything else is a bonus." For someone who spent his childhood as an outsider, as the forgotten boy shuffled between homes, Pierce Brosnan became a man who created his own place in the world. A man who wore a tuxedo like armor, who used charm as a weapon, and who, through decades of highs and lows, never stopped being the consummate survivor. From a small Irish town with no father, to the global stage as 007, and beyond into roles that defied every expectation placed on him, Pierce Brosnan's life is more than a Hollywood story. It's a testament to endurance. It's proof that timing isn't everything. Tenacity is. He wasn't just born to be Bond. He was born to be more. Even today, when Brosnan enters a room, or a screen, there's a subtle magnetism. Not just because he once played James Bond, but because he has lived through the kind of real-life struggle and redemption that most actors only portray. That journey, from orphan to international icon, has shaped his worldview, his art, and his enduring commitment to causes larger than himself. Unlike many celebrities who fade into obscurity after their peak, Brosnan has only deepened. He chooses roles that speak to themes of memory, regret, and resilience. His performance in The Sun, 2022, a western about generational trauma and the cycle of violence, was noted for its quiet intensity, proof that even in later life, he still seeks out complexity. He's also used his platform to speak out about politics, inequality, and the climate crisis. With his wife Keely, Brosnan has supported countless environmental initiatives. He serves on the board of directors for Sea Shepherd, an organization dedicated to marine wildlife conservation. His voice has echoed in international forums advocating for the banning of oceanic seismic airgun blasting and the protection of whales, dolphins, and coral reefs. He and Keely helped stop a salt plant from being built in Baja California's whale sanctuary. Unlike many celebrities who lend their names to causes for image reasons, Brosnan walks the walk. He lobbies, funds, and shows up. In interviews, Pierce often reflects on how mortality has shaped his perspective. He says he never takes love, family, or creative opportunity for granted. Losing Cassie and Charlotte left scars that never healed, but he's channeled that pain into purpose. "There's always a part of you that's broken," he once admitted. But that broken part becomes the part that lets light in. It's a sentiment echoed in his art, literally. His paintings, many of which he shares on social media, are raw, expressive, and filled with emotional energy. They aren't polished or commercial.